22-year-old Veronica Navarro made it official on Facebook. She logged into her social media account in the late afternoon of June 19, 2011, and posted that she had moved to Spicewood, Texas. The Laredo native seemed to have found her footing in life. She recently fled a rocky relationship, fell into the arms of a new boyfriend, had close family nearby, and a week after making this post, was going to be in the offices of a pediatrics center interviewing for a job as a medical assistant. But hours after this interview, on June 27, 2011, Veronica would vanish. In the week leading up to her disappearance, she posted about unpacking in her new home, fawned over her partner, and assured friends that she was no longer with that past boyfriend. Some of her final moments, in fact, were captured by surveillance cameras at a Walmart one day before that job interview. It shows her smiling alongside her new partner. But the smile belied a problem, because here, in this moment, Veronica is hiding something that will result in her murder. Lisa James had just put the landline's handset back into its base. It's July 11, 2011, and the Human Resources Director at Carousel Pediatrics had just tried all 3 phone numbers listed on Veronica Navarro's resume, but none of them got her through to the candidate for a front desk position at one of their locations. About 2 weeks earlier, on Monday, June 27, the tall and thin woman with long black hair walked into the office in Austin wearing a thin black blouse, a thin and loose sweater, dark gray slacks, and black flats, and sat down in the reception area. The Kaplan College graduate had earlier spotted a job posting on advertising website Craigslist for a position as a medical assistant. Veronica had originally been scheduled for an interview the previous Friday, but did not show up. Moments later, her interviewer, Veronica Estrada, steps out into the waiting area and greets the 22-year-old before escorting her into the conference room at just before 4:30 p.m. She seemed like a very happy person, excited to be there, Estrada said in court. She was excited, bubbly. Estrada said the office was interested in Veronica not just because of her personality and genuine smile, which would be assets in a front desk position, but also because she had experience as a medical assistant at a place called the Pediatric Care of Austin. The company had a specific need for a weekend front desk person at their Springdale location, and Veronica was only looking for a weekend position. Now, 2 weeks later, following the clearance of a background check, the company wants her back in, but they can't reach her. Estrada fires off an email to Veronica after Human Resources failed to get in touch, but she also doesn't get a response. Estrada must have thought Veronica was no longer interested because the company had previously tried calling but failed to reach her on July 6. They left a message, but she never returned the call. Nothing appeared amiss, perhaps in part because no missing person report was filed for Veronica. And so life, as they say, goes on. Later that July 11 day, Estrada goes over to her babysitter's home to pick up her children. I was shocked at first, Estrada said of a news report playing in the background that urged anyone with information as to Veronica's last movements or whereabouts to contact the homicide division. And that's exactly what Estrada did. 5 days earlier, on the morning of July 6, Jack Cadero and Aaron Newhar were out on Lake Travis to work on a boat dock when, roughly 100 feet away from them and about 10 feet from the shoreline, an object floats still. As they get closer, they confirm it's a tent based on the Coleman name. The water contoured the tent into the shape of a head and shoulders. Jack goes in for a touch and confirms that it feels like a shoulder and a forearm. They then make an incision with a small pocket knife and look inside. Moments later, a call is made to their boss, who phones the police using the landline at just before 11:30 a.m. Park rangers, the Travis County Sheriff's Office, and the Pedernales Fire Department, whose firemen traveled via boat, are dispatched to the scene. In nearly 100-degree weather, the surrounding air smelled of decomposition. The body had been weighed down by 2 cinder blocks and 2 paint cans attached to the victim's body in 3 different locations: around her knees and below, around her torso, and around her neck. The water in this area was only about 4 feet deep, as the lake that day was just 645 feet above sea level, 37 feet short of being full. They loaded the victim into the Pedernales fireboat and shuttled her over to the Camp Chautauqua ramp, where she was taken into the medical examiner's vehicle. The victim, later identified by the ME as 22-year-old Veronica Navarro, was wearing a black high-waisted skirt with no underwear underneath and a gray long-sleeved shirt with a short-sleeved black shirt over the top of it. Investigators made a couple of initial observations. The first was that the clothes on Veronica, a medium shirt and a size 9 skirt, were too large for someone who wore very small and a size 1 or 0 skirt. And the second observation was that the rope used to weigh her down was intricately knotted in a way that indicated experience. It was as if the person who did this knew what they were doing. At just 18, Veronica knew what she wanted. She always mentioned that she wanted to move to a bigger city, Veronica's older sister Jacqueline said in court. When we were younger, she was always independent and she always wanted to do things her way, even if my parents didn't let us. After graduating high school, Veronica, who was the second oldest of 6 kids, moved from Laredo to Austin, where she lived with her cousin Anna Karen, who said in court that the two grew up together and hung out every summer. Anna Karen conveyed that she had an open-door policy for Veronica, who would often reach out to her whenever she needed a person to talk to or a place to stay, and she would take advantage of Anna Karen's hospitality over the next 4 years. Across the street from Anna Karen was a teen named Chris Kashimba. He would just mention he was crushing on her when we were younger, Anna Karen said of Chris's feelings toward Veronica. Chris met Veronica through Anna Karen's family. When Veronica went up to visit her cousin from Laredo in the summers, he would come over and spend time with them. He developed deep feelings for the woman described by her older sister as very intelligent, spontaneous, and funny. It was just cool to hang out with her, Jacqueline said. She was a very brave person. She would always defend us, regardless of anything. The friendship, which grew through their work at the Hyde Park Baptist Church, took a serious turn when the two started talking about a dating relationship over phone conversations while she lived in Laredo. After moving to Austin, it took Veronica just 3 months to start dating Chris, and a little more than half a year to move in with the 17-year-old, according to testimony. It was like every other relationship, Chris said in court. It was very nice, humble, loving, very good times. There's not really words to explain how wonderful of a person she was and great relationship we had. But, like most relationships, the two had their issues. In the roughly 2 years they were living together, the couple would get into arguments, some of which resulted in police activity. Jacqueline said they would always bicker about money because Chris would allegedly not work and Veronica would be left to pick up the slack. On October 24, 2008, a deputy was dispatched at the King's Court residence on a family disturbance call that involved a verbal fight between Chris and Veronica, according to police reports. Then on February 26, 2010, 2 officers responded to a report that Chris was chasing Veronica down a street. Chris was upset and emotional when Veronica told him she was breaking off the relationship with him, according to the report, and he didn't want her to leave his house until they talked it over. There was no physical violence and there were no injuries sustained by either of the two. The two broke it off about 3 times in the 2-year period they were dating, the last time coming in or around May 2011. For Chris, there were at least 2 things that bothered him in the relationship: Veronica moving on from him, and tattoos because, as a Christian, he said he didn't believe that people should desecrate the vessel for their soul. While Chris said he didn't much care for Veronica's existing tattoos before they got together, he admitted the tattoos that came after they started dating spawned uncomfortable conversations between the two. Among the rose on her left ankle, the rose-wrapped cross on her upper back, and the birds on her shoulders, one tattoo in particular stood out. It was of a hibiscus flower overlaid with a name Veronica's parents told Detective Sylvia Leal about: Joe Derrick. It's just after 9 a.m. on June 28, 2011, the day after Veronica's interview, and 27-year-old Joe Derrick Carr, an engineer for the Pedernales Fire Department Station 801, is at the wheel of a siren-blaring fire truck speeding down a street toward a home in Briar Cliff. He's paying no mind to Jared McKeska, a firefighter who has now asked him 4 times to throw him a pair of medical gloves from a box on the dashboard. Department rules stipulate that the fireman must remain belted in as the truck is moving, so Jared, who is in the back seat, cannot do it himself. Joe finally snaps out of it and complies after Lieutenant Bruce Perkins, who is in the passenger seat next to him, intercedes. This won't be the last time Joe, who just started a standard 24-hour shift that morning, is unfocused. The 3 are about to attend to a medical emergency, specifically a stroke, which isn't a new experience for the fire department. In fact, medical emergencies make up the bulk of the calls they take at the small station, at least at the time of this story. In a situation where the fire staff is attending to the patient, the firefighter and the engineer, who require EMT training for full-time work, would check vital signs as the lieutenant does the paperwork. But Joe, who has been with the station for about 3 years now, is not assisting. This was unlike the well-liked Joe. Jared and others at the station described him as prompt, serious about, and hardworking at a job he never got flustered with. He graduated from the Austin Community College Fire Academy and already had 3 years of fire experience prior to this, including being involved in 12 structure fires according to his Pedernales Fire Department application. But he was also looser and upbeat around the station. I say looser because before his divorce, Joe used to be deep into Bible study, used to complain about foul language thrown about, and bemoans the R-rated movies played at the station. He had in fact earned the nickname Pissy Pants after he peed on a Texas A&M University shower curtain at a party in which he was drunk. After getting back from the stroke call, Jared recalls Joe getting into the station, getting into one of the recliners, curling up, putting his hat over his head, and trying to sleep. It wasn't like him at all, Jared recalls. At roughly 7 p.m. that day, well short of his 24-hour commitment, Joe walks into Lieutenant Perkins' office and asks to leave early because he said he wasn't feeling well. Because the station requires for every call 3 firemen, a lieutenant, an engineer, and a firefighter, Joe's request would put the truck out of service that night for 45 minutes until they could get a replacement. I was like, "Can you hold out until we get somebody else to come in, or is it that bad you need to go home?" the lieutenant recalled asking. He said, "No, I need to leave." Joe's pain would last several days. On the morning of Friday, the 1st of July, Lieutenant Perkins entered the station, looked around, and didn't see Joe, even though he was scheduled for that 9 a.m. shift. When he went into his office, he saw that Joe had left a paid time off request form. The problem was the lieutenant needed to sign off on it first. Lieutenant Perkins gave Joe a ring, leaves a voicemail, and then a text, but he doesn't hear back from him until Monday, the 4th of July, when Joe walks into the station as if nothing happened. The lieutenant gives him the old finger wag about procedure as Joe explains that he and his girlfriend had split up and he didn't want to leave his house out of fear that she was going to trash it. The excuse wasn't enough to avoid a written reprimand, to which Joe was upset but appeared to understand. For the rest of the shift, Lieutenant Perkins observes Joe, being Joe, eager and energetic. The next day, Lieutenant Perkins signs off at 9 a.m. to complete his 24-hour rotation and enter a 48-hour break, but Joe stays behind. He has picked up a shift from a coworker and is going to do another 24 hours. At 9 a.m. on July 6, Joe completes his 48-hour rotation and waves to Jared as he exits the station. Jared then settles into the lounge area when, roughly 3 hours later, he gets a buzz from the pager on his belt. The Pedernales Fire Department covers the southwestern corner of Travis County, from Bee Caves Road up to the county line, plus about 18 miles of lakefront property, at least at the time of the story. Its staff has experience fighting wildfires and, pertinent to this case, specializes in cliff and water rescues. Lake Travis is a common response spot for the department, because it's a high-risk area for its biking trails, terrain, and the kids' cliff from which people jump into the water. The department has put a lot of attention and training on it. That includes being able to do rope rescues that require competence at tying specific kinds of knots for rappelling down the side of the cliffs and creating anchor and hauling systems to retrieve patients, training they can get from the Austin Community College Fire Academy. And Lake Travis is where Jared and his crew are called for a still water rescue, which could be anything from a distressed or drowning swimmer to a body in the water. It takes Jared, Lieutenant Wade Schmidzinski, and engineer Chase Westerman 5 minutes to get to the flat-bottom pontoon boat on the Briar Cliff Marina before speeding toward the Tatum Cove boat ramp on Lake Travis. When they get to the ramp, they are told by the boaters about what they had found. That same afternoon, Joe Carr's blue Kia Rio is seen being driven into a car service bay at a Walmart in Marble Falls. Him going in to pay at the register. And then him leaving. He has a long trip ahead of him. But before that, he'll be enjoying the rest of his day at the Blues on the Green concert in Austin, where he'll see an acquaintance named Sarah and have a one-night stand with her later that night. He gets up the next morning, July 7, and drives her to her friend's place. That same morning, at 9 a.m., Lieutenant Perkins clocks in for another 24-hour marathon. He scans the main entrance area, then the lounge, and then goes over to his desk, but he sees neither of what he expects to see, Joe or a PTO form. Joe is not in the station for his shift again, but this time he doesn't leave notice. Lieutenant Perkins would never see Joe at the station or in uniform again.
Could you go ahead and introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes. My name is Satish Chandru. I'm the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner for Travis County.
Dr. Satish Chandru is carefully examining Veronica's neck. The Deputy Chief Medical Examiner for Travis County, who began the autopsy around 7 a.m. on the 7th, is a very short time away from drawing up a critical report that would assist the Sheriff's Office and the prosecutor in bringing murder charges in the case. In a lot of homicides, the autopsy is a formality. Normally, there would be some immediate or obvious indicator of the direct cause of death. But this case is different. Beside what looked like a deliberate carve-out of the rose-wrapped cross on her upper mid-back, which was determined not to have contributed to her death, Veronica had no obvious indicators of the cause. No cuts, stab wounds, gunshot wounds, blunt trauma, bruises, organ damage, nothing. The body, at this point, was in a moderate decompositional state. Considering they were in the middle of a Texas summer, Dr. Chandru determined that it would take less than 24 hours for the body to get to this point. In this state of deterioration, any injuries that would show the cause of death would be obscured by this condition. In other words, if there were signs of the current leading cause, which was asphyxiation, it was going to be hard to definitively prove that any marks around her neck were the result of a deliberate action versus just decomposition, even with the knowledge that a rope around her neck was partially anchored by paint cans and cinder blocks. Worse still was that another way to induce asphyxiation, suffocation via bag over her head, would have likely created tears in the mouth, but no such markers were visible on her. Moreover, a toxicology report found no drugs or substances in her system. No Valium, no Xanax, no anti-anxiety medications, nothing. Her medical history was clean. Toxicology wasn't going to help solve this case either. Dr. Chandru had to draw his conclusions based on a negative toxicology, no history or direct indication of natural disease, and nothing traumatic leading to a direct cause of death. The only thing left to draw from was the surrounding investigative factors, the cutouts of her tattoos and, of course, the way she was found. Because she couldn't possibly have stuffed herself in a tent that was then weighed down by paint cans and cinder blocks, Dr. Chandru inferred that the manner of death was homicide, and that the cause of death was asphyxiation. The doctor then notified Detective Leal of the Travis County Sheriff's Office about his findings. At that point, detectives with the Sheriff's Office had an arrest warrant for tampering with evidence. That charge developed from circumstantial links investigators were able to make with the tent, the paint cans, the cinder blocks, and the way the rope was intricately knotted. A search warrant of a home in Spicewood on Saturday, July 9 yielded a similar cinder block outside the perimeter of the home and a rope ladder with similarly sophisticated knotting. In the storage room, investigators found an empty Coleman tent bag that matched the make and model of the tent that housed Veronica. The home smelled of a fresh coat of paint, so crime scene specialists cut a section of the drywall to get a paint mix sample. After a multi-test examination, the sample from the drywall matched that from the can of paint found on Veronica. To be sure, the barcode label on the paint cans listed the purchase location and date, a Lowe's in Hutto in July 2010. The same purchase location of the other two cans found anchoring Veronica. The discoveries went beyond coincidence. Dr. Shundru's report excluded all other reasonable factors that could have caused her death. The only piece that was missing now was the person suspected of being involved. It was a slip-up. Just before their third and final breakup, Chris and Veronica had been out at Tex-Mex restaurant Baby A's one morning in May 2011 when Veronica, sifting through photos on her phone, accidentally revealed photos of her and Joe together. I was jealous, which caused arguments between her and I, Chris testified. The night before, Veronica and her cousin Anna Karen were out on Congress Avenue in Austin when, by chance, Veronica and Joe locked eyes and then hugged. Anna Karen's recollection makes it sound like it was a fluke encounter. Veronica actually wanted to duck into a bar to get a drink, but Anna Karen couldn't go in, so they decided to just walk the street. Anna Karen didn't know it at the time, but Veronica and Joe had known each other since high school and even dated for a time. We went into a dancing club, and we were in there, and that's where they socialized the rest of the night, Anna Karen recalled. Anna Karen couldn't stay long, but her cousin reassured her that Joe would bring her back later that night. Later that night being 4 a.m. This was spontaneous Veronica. When we got home, at first she cried and said she was sorry. She would never do it again, and it was a mistake, that she loved me, and she didn't know why she met up with him that night, Chris recalled about his conversation with Veronica after they left Baby A's that morning. The tension brewed despite the fact that Chris and Veronica were currently in their off period of their on and off relationship, according to him. Like, I love her, I forgave her, and I told her okay, but a day or two went by and, it got brought back up, and so she decided to leave. I was at work and she was like, well, by the time you get off work, my stuff and I will be gone. Veronica, who wanted to settle into a stable relationship, officially broke it off with Chris and confirmed it on Facebook. Anna Karen, who consoled a crying Veronica after the breakup, said Joe offered her what she thought was a real relationship, so she was giving him a chance. Things were developing quickly between the couple. Joe bought Veronica a white Dodge Stratus and moved her into a secluded home in Spicewood he started leasing on June 15. Veronica would text her cousin about painting the walls of the new home. On June 20, Veronica wished her cousin a happy 20th birthday, a special occasion that warranted a special celebration. On the weekend of the 24th, a couple of Anna Karen's cousins were coming in from Laredo to celebrate. Of course, Anna Karen texts Veronica about coming out to dinner on Friday and a dance on Saturday, but Veronica never ends up coming out. This was strange in part because Veronica had originally offered to host a party at her place. Then again, to Anna Karen, Veronica never was the same since her move. Her texts to her had become less frequent than usual. She spoke of asking Joe before going out, and on a trip to San Antonio earlier that month, Veronica told her that she was really confused and stressed out about where she was in her romantic relationship. Because despite the whirlwind moves, Chris was never out of the picture. We never completely ended the relationship. We kept in touch over phone. We would call or text. When he would go to work, she would come over, he said, referring to Joe. When he was not around, she would call me or text me. When he wasn't around, that's pretty much when we spoke. Veronica's final communication with Anna Karen came via text message that Sunday, when Anna Karen's cousins left before getting to see Veronica for what would have been the last time. That Sunday morning, over Facebook, Veronica messages another of her friends telling her that she's sorry she couldn't come out and that she had to take care of Joe's baby, who he had from a previous relationship. The couple, in fact, is seen just after 3:30 p.m. that Sunday shopping at a Walmart. And then as they leave, they appear to be like a normal, happy pair, with Veronica smiling. It's a smile, however, that did not reflect the internal turmoil Veronica was experiencing. Because what Anna Karen and the girls didn't know at the time was that, while Joe was at work, Veronica had stayed over at Chris's place the weekend of Anna Karen's birthday celebration. Crucially, Veronica had decided over that weekend that within the next 2 weeks, she was going to break some news to Joe. It's the morning of Saturday, July 9, and Lieutenant Stormy Davis of the Pedernales Fire Department is in the officers' quarters sipping on his coffee and chatting with colleagues when the phone rings. It is a call that would change the course of the investigation into the murder of Veronica Navarro. Earlier that day, nearly 1,500 miles north at the Emerson point of entry on the North Dakota-Canada border, Prosper Kuanu of the Canada Border Services Agency walks into a sitting area for those seeking entry into the country. Prosper had just clocked into his 7:30 shift, papers in hand, after a handoff from the night shift official who briefed him about a man named Joe Carr waiting for secondary examination. The man, the official said, told him he didn't have proof of Canadian or American citizenship, so Prosper needed to run some additional checks on him before an entry decision was made. After presenting his birth certificate proving his U.S. citizenship, Joe was asked why he wants to come to Canada. He says he's on a 4-week vacation and presents nearly $2,000 in cash, showing that he won't be a burden on the government during his stay. Prosper then asks whether he has a backup means of financial support, such as a credit card. Joe tells him no. I thought for someone who is a professional firefighter to be making a trip for 4 weeks, the minimum is to have a credit or debit card as backup, Prosper testified. I started doubting at that point that he was a firefighter at all. That's the first time I got suspicious. Prosper then pocket searches Joe and asks him for his keys to bring the car in for a look. From the messy condition of the 2008 blue Kia Rio, Prosper said he thought the guy was coming to the country to work illegally. One of the first things Prosper noticed was a pair of license plates that didn't look to him like a spare for the car. I told him that I thought something was amiss here, and I'm having a gut feeling there's more to the story he's telling me, and that I want him to come clean. And he said there's nothing else, Prosper testified. To quell suspicion, Prosper asks for and receives from Joe a phone number for his fire department so he can confirm that he's actually a fireman. Lieutenant Stormy Davis picks up the receiver and confirms he has reached the Pedernales Fire Department. Prosper tells him that a Joe Carr wants to come to Canada and asks whether he works at the department. The lieutenant, who had been contacted by the Travis County Sheriff's Office about Joe the day before, gets Prosper's number and tells him he'll call right back. Moments before this, Detective Tom Szymanski had been traveling to Joe's home in Spicewood to execute a search warrant on the house when he got the call from the lieutenant. This was a game-changing call because no one, not Tom nor his partner Detective Leal, knew where Joe was, despite the assistance of the U.S. Marshals Service. About half an hour later, Detective Leal calls Prosper, alerting him that Joe is a suspect in a murder investigation. While Prosper said he couldn't hold Joe because he didn't have a warrant in the system for him, he said by then he had already denied him entry and called his counterpart at the Pembina crossing in North Dakota, alerting him he was sending back the suspected fugitive. Guns drawn, Pembina customs officials forced Joe, parked in lane 2, out of his car at just before 9 a.m. that Saturday, the 9th of July. One officer noted that Joe was very calm and didn't ask any questions, which he said was unusual to him. He is escorted into a holding cell inside and held at the port for 7.5 hours before being released at 4:30 p.m. to the Pembina County Sheriff's Department in Cavalier, where he is read his Miranda rights and held in the jail. There, he has a strange phone conversation with his mother.
Joe Derek.
Hey,
Joe Derek.
Mom.
Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Joe Derek, did you kill Veronica?
Mom. I'm in the Pembina County Jail. I guess they had a warrant out for my arrest.
Derek, tell me, did you hurt her? Yes or no?
It's in, it's 308 Courthouse Drive in, North Dakota. But,
You know they searched your house.
no, did they?
They took samples from your house. They have a homicide report in your house for Veronica. Do you know this?
No.
Okay. Don't leave the United States. We will take care of this. You got to come home.
What, I mean, maybe you can get a bail bond, somebody, to see if they can get me out. I mean, I have, some money that I have with me.
You can't skip the country if we get you out.
Well, what do you want me to do?
You've got to come home. You've got to come home. What are you in jail for? Is it for homicide?
I don't know what it's for.
They have to tell you what it's for.
No, well, they didn't tell me.
Okay. Do not talk. Do not say anything.
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay, I'm just going to call Daddy.
Okay.
Because Daddy is calling the borders trying to find you right now.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Did you do anything wrong?
No, not today.
Okay, you have done nothing. Nothing. I want you to tell me the truth.
No. Hey,
Do not hurt anybody.
can you tell Dad happy birthday for me? I missed his birthday the other day.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Why did you run? Why are you trying to go to Canada?
I just figured that was the best thing to do.
But you didn't do anything wrong. They did not tell you that you were being arrested for homicide charges. They did not tell you that?
No.
They
No.
did not tell you what your arrest warrant is for.
Nuh-uh. They just said I had a warrant up for my arrest in Travis County.
You don't know what it's for?
Uh-uh.
No?
Nuh-uh.
You do know.
No, I don't.
Okay.
By Monday, detectives Leal and Szymanski had arrived in Pembina to take photos of the contents of the car, which to Detective Leal appeared like he stuffed in a rush. He had coolers, backpacks, caffeinated drinks and pills to keep him awake, a tent, personal documents, a cricket phone that was of no investigative value, his laptops, newspapers showing he'd been to South Padre Island on the 4th of July weekend, a tattoo business card and a stencil of a sparrow showing he's a tattoo artist who likely put the tattoos on Veronica's shoulders, sand on the driver's side floorboard, a gym shirt in the same adult-sized medium as the shirt found on Veronica, and 2 items that certainly caught investigators' eyes. Texas license plates that came back to Veronica's white Dodge Stratus, and, inside his wallet, a woman's engagement ring.
Let me ask you something real quick.
Okay.
If you caught someone shoplifting, would you turn them in?
Yeah?
You would? Oh, okay.
What's the situation?
Oh, because you took my breath away when I saw you.
Good. See, she's laughing at it. Good. Now the question is, do you go on to make your statement of intent?
That is really good.
I'm so glad that you laughed, because when I saw you from over there, and I just had to make sure you had a sense of humor
That is really
before I introduced myself.
I'm Anna, by the way.
This video was uploaded to a channel on YouTube called Speed Seduction on February 16, 2010. Its creator, who is known in the female pickup space, is reacting to another video uploaded to Vimeo called Best by Sarge February 15 by a user named Rushdown who, according to this description, was demonstrating how to speed seduce women known in the pickup world as sarging. The only reason this is relevant is because Joe watched the Speed Seduction channel and likely came across this video in particular, according to notes he made that were retrieved by investigators. It includes openers, quotes, and things to avoid. A true student of the game who, in an earlier life, was fumbling the football. Just ask Jessica Powell, who at 16 in the summer of 2002 first met Joe at the same pool where she was a swim instructor, and he was a lifeguard. The two developed a friendship and then quickly began dating. Jessica described it as unserious, perhaps because she said he wasn't ready for a committed relationship at the time. They'd do the dinner, movie, hangout circuit until she had to go to college, after which, she said, the relationship kind of fell off. Several years later, through a social media website, Jessica and Joe get back in touch right before Joe gets married to his wife, Larissa. She attends the wedding. The two maintained contact until he reached out one day and told Jessica that Larissa was upset about his friendship with her, and that he couldn't talk to her anymore. More time goes by, and in January 2010, Jessica runs into Joe at a pub called Sherlock's. He relays to her that, despite having a child by Larissa and the marriage still being so young, the two got a divorce. They soon start dating again. She thought she was on a fast track with him because they had dated previously. It was during his downtime as a Pedernales firefighter that he would go see her on her lunch break and then after work, when she would spend time with him and his child. For leisure, the couple hiked and camped, where one day he got down on one knee. "I got freaked out," Jessica said about the marriage proposal. "In the beginning, the relationship was good, but it was moving a little too fast for me." She swiftly broke up with him. He tried texting and calling her. He'd be angry sometimes and apologetic at other times, all the way into May 2011, but she ignored him. She had a sixth sense more useful than seeing ghosts, because in hindsight, Jessica averted disaster. Very intense, and everything just happened really fast, was how May Patterson described the first part of her short stint in Joe's world. She met him in November 2010 on a dating website, and within a week, he told her over the phone that she could move in with him. "I didn't really acknowledge him," she said. "It was just awkward." She did take him up on his offer to buy her a car, though, admitting in court that she started using him for his resources after realizing the relationship was kaput before he did. But we're getting ahead of the plot. When the two met in person that same week, they started talking. She said he brought with him a love journal in which he endeavored to chronicle their relationship and future plans. She said he would say tacky things that sounded like the stuff out of romance movies, which weirded her out. Then came one of those camping trips, a photo from which May took at the end of November 2010. It features two tents, one that is the same make and look as the one that was used to store Veronica's body. It was 4 weeks into their dating relationship, and while on one of these trips, Joe got down on one knee and, well, it was a lot, May recalled. She broke up with him over the phone in mid-January 2011. The relationship lasted all of 2.5 months. He immediately fired off some angry texts and voicemails, but then cooled off the next day and said he just really loved her. The attempted calls, voicemails, and texts continued for a week or two, but she left him on read, and heard in the case of voicemails, I suppose. The patterns are uncanny, relationships that move too fast, end quickly after he proposes, and result in him fumbling any prospect of a win-back by sending volumes of angry and apologetic phone traffic, akin to a DDoS attack. Lisa Torres, however, didn't stick around for the entire short story, just enough to see the villain arc. He first randomly waved to her at the intersection of Pleasant Valley and Riverside in Austin in 2005, before formally introducing himself in his firefighter uniform as he waited behind her in a Chick-fil-A restaurant line at the Barton Creek Mall where she worked. She said he was very charming and very nice, and would visit her at work and call her as many as 10 times a day. The two date for about 2 or 3 months before reality physically restrains her and bites her on the lip.
We'd gone to the movies, and like I said, I didn't know him well enough to know that he was under the influence at that point in time when we went. And I guess it was more of a verbal argument that we had a disagreement about going to the movie. Okay, you didn't feel good, let's stay home. Let me let you go back home and I'm going to go home. We'll do this another time. And he didn't want to accept that. So when I got out of the truck, because we were talking and going to the ticket booth, and that's when he got upset. And so I said, let's go, and he wouldn't let me back in the truck. And so I got up from the car. I was sitting on the curb. I got up and I was going to call somebody to come, hey, come help me. That's where I'm good. And that's when he grabbed my phone and said, you want to call the fucking police? Well, then there you go. There goes my phone. But right before that, that's when I was on the curb, right before I told him that he had laid on top of me and grabbed my arms, and he bit my lip because he kept asking me, kiss me, and I said, no, no. And then I got away, and that's when I tried to call the phone.
The next place Lisa has contact with Joe Carr is in court. While she didn't press charges against him for the incident, she did file for a protective order against him. Lisa only needed 2 or 3 months with Joe to know she needed legally enforced separation from him. Once the timer ran out on that, however, things got weird. Okay, fine. Weirder. She filed a police report in December 2006 stating that he had gotten 50 feet from her at the mall, motioned 2 fingers to his eyes, and then pointed them back at her. As far as the public record goes, she would be only the first woman to go the legal route. Pedernales firefighters testified to seeing his demanding and protective nature with his wife Larissa. He would command her to stand next to him if he saw her sitting near or around other men, instruct her not to get distracted when watching a YouTube video with him, and get upset with her about various things over the phone, including not being home on time and not doing certain things around the house. More than a year later, Joe would plead guilty to family violence and practically skirt with mere probation. According to Larissa's affidavit on that matter at 9 a.m. on September 3, he got angry because she locked her phone when he wanted to look at who she had been calling. He then pinned her down on the bed and hit her with his closed fists, which resulted in a bump on her head. She said he then went through her phone contacts and called one of the numbers to see who they were. A friend of the couple further testified that he allegedly killed her dogs and broke the TV because they pulled her attention away from him. In January 2010, Larissa was awarded a protective order against Joe, who failed to attend the hearing. He was required to take anger management class as part of the court order. Jessica Powell said he broke her car console in a drunken rage. Mae Patterson said he would get jealous when she was with her friends. Rebecca Moreno, who had a casual romantic relationship with him in the early 2000s, filed a police report stating she found 3 of her tires slashed after she refused to let him in her home around 5 a.m. He tried choking out another date as they were watching a movie. In the theater, according to an account his friend said came from Joe's inebriated mouth. When she screamed, the account continues, he ran out the back door, jumped into a dumpster, and lathered himself with garbage to throw off sniffing dogs. When urged to get psychiatric help, Joel told his friend he was speaking with a pastor. "No, seriously," his friend told him. This is the backdrop framing for Veronica Navarro's trip home from Chris's place that Sunday, June 26, one day before her interview. Chris testified that Veronica told him she was afraid of Joe, that she didn't like his attitude, and that he would throw massive fits that had him hurling stuff around the house. People who saw or heard of interactions between the two recall Joe being controlling, condescending, and mean. She sought refuge at Chris's or Anna Karen's, but only when he was at work. Otherwise, he would get mad if she wasn't in his line of sight. Her communications with Chris were discreet. They had a plan to see and talk to each other without Joe knowing. That is, until she decided she couldn't do it anymore. Roughly a month into her whirlwind relationship with the man of the hour, Veronica, realizing her mistake and preference for Chris, had decided that weekend that she was going to tell her brand new fiancé during one of his drunken blow-ups that she was ending the engagement. I was getting off work, heading to my house, and my mother called me crying, telling me that Joe Derrick had murdered Veronica, Chris recalled. Chris had tried reaching Veronica every day up to that point, unsure of whether she had reconciled with Joe or if something bad had happened. Regardless, he would have been worried anyway. When Veronica returned to Spicewood on Sunday the 26th of June, she was confronted by Joe about whether she went anywhere while he was away. Joe had realized something was amiss when he placed his hand on the hood of his blue Kia Rio and felt it was hot. Why was it hot if she didn't go anywhere, he asked her. She told him she had to get tampons from the dollar store. Chris recalls a visibly worried and nervous Veronica telling him at his house after her job interview the next day. Chris said she conveyed that the two had a major fight that night that clearly had a lasting effect on her. But precisely what occurred in the home in Spicewood in the nights following her interview is not known. That and how her Dodge Stratus got a flat tire. Chris, who provided a DNA sample, was initially a suspect in the case, but his phone's communications with nearby cell towers mapped him around his house around the time of the suspected murder, which the sheriff's office believe happened on the 28th. On the other hand, a tower dump for Joe's number plots him around and near where Veronica was discovered. We don't know the contents of the communications between Veronica and the two men in her life, but their timing is nonetheless instructive for the purposes of realizing the tension, especially considering everything we know now. Joe calls Veronica's phone after her interview at 5:46 p.m. on the 27th. She then makes an outgoing call to Chris from around the job site at 6:25 p.m., and then several more to Chris after 7:30 p.m. near his home. Besides a series of back-and-forth text messages, Joe had been receiving and making calls to Veronica near his house off of Highway 71. He makes an outgoing call to her at 7:27 p.m., at 8 p.m., and at 8:10 p.m. before he receives her very last outgoing call at 8:11 p.m. as she is traveling north near Bee Cave towards Spicewood. The call lasts 1 minute and 30 seconds. Joe had been suspicious since Sunday, and these suspicions hadn't subsided by Monday night. According to investigators in the state, he was on to Veronica. Between 8:24 p.m. and 10:32 p.m., Joe's phone has no voice activity. Telling to the state is that Joe doesn't try calling Veronica's phone after June 27. Exactly how he killed her, the state doesn't provide an exact theory. He then goes to work later on the morning of the 28th and is immediately thrust into driving the fire truck to that stroke call. He's zoning out, he's lethargic, he's unlike himself, and he later that day needs to take time off. Her body is still in the home. Investigators then plot his phone at Pace Bend Park at 1:15 a.m. on June 29, where and when he's believed to have tried to submerge her body in Lake Travis. The park at this time would not have had anyone manning the gate. Lieutenant Stormy Davis had been working at the fire department since 2006, and since Joe's hiring, he said he had no idea he had a family violence conviction and 2 restraining orders against him. He said that would have been something he would have liked to know about someone's application to work at the fire department. Joe's defense lawyers conceded that Joe was the one to put the body in the lake, but argued there isn't a shred of evidence showing what happened when she got home and none to show that he was the killer. Their multi-pronged defense went something like this. If someone is suffocated with a bag, you'd expect some type of struggle. Maybe some kicking, scratching, and certainly some DNA under the fingernails if that was the case. But there was no sign of that. Joe could not have killed Veronica in a jealous rage because the state showed that Chris and Veronica kept their relationship a secret. Veronica appeared happy with Joe and posted on Facebook that he was her fiancé that Sunday. And the cutout of her tattoo could have been concentrated decomposition, despite the medical examiner saying the edges were too sharp for that to happen naturally. But it's really the lack of any type of injury on and lack of substances in Veronica that the defense argued for the possibility that she died from sudden arrhythmic death syndrome, or SADS, which is described as the unexpected death of a relatively healthy person with no history of cardiac disease that, at the time, claimed the lives of about 2,500 people a year. They argued she died of SADS sometime between June 27 and June 29 at 1:15 a.m., and Joe panicked. He perhaps was worried about his job and dumped her in the lake. He doesn't answer his mom's questions on that jail call, the defense continued, because he was told he had the right to remain silent. The jury didn't buy it. Joe Derek Carr, a man with a long documented history of violence against women whose record flew under the radar of the fire department that hired him, and the woman who for a very brief period loved him, was convicted of murder and tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to respective 60 and 20-year terms to run side by side. Detective John Gerner of the Travis County Sheriff's Office knew in that moment that he was in trouble. It's late February 2014, roughly 2 weeks after trial, and Detective Leal had just returned her Joe Carr files to him, presumably to be warehoused. But when Detective Gerner went to put the files away, he noticed a rather thick case jacket filled with evidence that never made it to trial. The jacket contained investigative files, credit card info, surveillance footage, and the interview with Lisa Torres that was not turned over to Detective Leal, who would have submitted them to the prosecutor who, in turn, would have handed them to the defense. This is a grave error because it could compromise the fairness of the trial. Detective Gerner is brought in to testify on what's called a Brady violation after the defense filed a motion for a new trial on the basis that the new evidence was possibly exculpatory. The detective testified that he thought Detective Leal got a copy or made copies of these additional pieces of evidence, but that clearly was not the case. The defense argued that Veronica's smile in that surveillance frame undermines the state's theory that she was afraid of Joe that Sunday, while Lisa Torres' story to detectives contained inconsistencies with her version on the stand that would have allowed the defense, if it had the benefit, to challenge her credibility. The judge, who was astonished that a Brady violation could even take place, agreed with the state that the new evidence would unlikely change the result. For one, existing evidence presented to the jury showed that there were cordial relations between Veronica and Joe on Sunday, so there's nothing new there. And Lisa Torres' testimony came during the sentencing phase, where there is no jury, and the judge found enough corroboration about Lisa's story for the interview not to have a bearing on the verdict. Lisa was also testifying by way of subpoena, not voluntarily, because she said she wanted to put that traumatic experience behind her. When Joe's defense lawyer had nothing else to argue, Joe piped up against the advice of the judge and said he didn't kill Veronica. She asphyxiated on her own vomit, he claimed. I discovered her and I did CPR on her, Your Honor. After a 10-minute break, Joe tells the judge that he is firing his lawyer and wants a new one. He is kicked out of court by deputies for disrupting. As for the evidence gaffe, the head of law enforcement operations at the sheriff's office filed complaints against everyone involved, and an internal affairs investigation resulted in the entire chain of command being replaced. While Joe was still incarcerated, he couldn't buck the image he created for himself as a womanizer. Leanne Jones recalls her experience. It was November 16, 2011, and the corrections officer at the Travis County Sheriff's Office just picked up a note that had come from under a cell door in the protective custody unit. It was a note written by Joe asking for photographs so he could draw her. Joe was trying to fraternize the guard, which, believe it or not, is prohibited. When told as much, Joe said he didn't want to get himself in trouble and that he only wanted to show her that he could draw. She didn't ask. He managed to pass some of those unsolicited drawings to her, which were then disposed. 4 days later, on a tip from an inmate, a corrections guard conducted a shakedown of Joe's cell. There, he found a piece of paper that said he was feeling great because he had Mrs. Jones fever. There was an envelope with some pigeon feathers, a small piece of paper with her name on it, some draft letters, and a bundle of flowers that he made out of tissue paper and that were housed in saran wrap. He also had a calendar marking the times only the female officers worked, including those of Mrs. Jones. It's hard to believe, but the result wasn't a feel-good ride-off into the sunset love story. Instead, Mrs. Jones was moved away from that unit, and Joe was put into a separation cell.
What do you want people to remember about Veronica?
She really happy. Yeah. She wasn't perfect, but honestly, a happy person, and you know, like any ordinary girl. She just chose the wrong guy. Yeah.
How difficult was it hearing those different women today talking about their different experiences with him?
No, I wasn't either.
Just a routine. I mean, it was a routine he did over and over again. And the fact that I saw this routine on my cousin and couldn't stop it, it affected me a lot. Because I saw the same things being offered to her. And if I would have met these women that were lucky enough to get out that relationship, I would have pulled my cousin out as well. I mean, we weren't that lucky, but at least we stopped him.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to me narrate this story, which is based on the primary sources. Special thanks to the reporters bringing light to these cases, to the court clerks and the records departments for their assistance, and to you guys for engaging in the subject matter. Be well, do acts of charity, and I'll see you next time. Good night.